Paul, another episode of Fights with Friends, man.
Another episode of Fights with Friends. Dude, I am so excited. I'm excited about every episode because we just have our people here to just talk to and bullshit with.
But this one is awesome. We have like a real old school vet.
I mean, we have a guy that I have been watching in movies since I was a kid.
Yes.
Movies that my father talked about, that my father had me watch. It is really awesome to have our next guest who is going to be coming on the show, and that is
Doc Duhame.
Doc Duhame.
And
who is just recently got done coordinating Ray Donovan.
Yep.
And we're going to dive deep into one of those fights, which you, my friend Steve, we're doubling the 1X or the 3X.
The 3X. Yeah, 3X. Basically, for the listeners, 3X means it's the third person on the call sheet. So the 3 would be the third person on a call sheet. 3X is the stunt double for the third person on the call sheet. But Eddie Marson. So there'll be a little bit of inside baseball, right? Because I worked with Doc on that show. I got to work with him a little bit on Hunters too. I mean, he was performing, not coordinating. That was under Jared Burke. Great episode, dude. This interview goes long.
I mean,
it goes long.
It's a long interview. There are many rabbit holes that we try and pull ourselves out of as we go down to. I mean, as we said, the span of Doc's stunt career is pretty extensive and pretty awesome. So I think we're going to get into some pretty cool conversations.
Yeah, man. I mean, he talked about being a young performer, you know, having the likes of people like Terry Leonard tell him their stories and share stories and kind of ease him into the business. But I feel like we're getting that experience with Doc.
We are.
Doc
for sure.
is telling some amazing stories from his career and about the business. And it's pretty awesome, dude.
I notice you have a crystal skull.
I have a crystal skull here, and that is because Doc was in Indiana Jones in a crystal skull.
Not just in it.
Well, he was in it, but he also was the whip trainer for Harrison Ford in that movie, which is pretty amazing. So
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, Harrison Ford is synonymous
with the whip,
with the bullwhip, you know, when it comes to Indiana Jones. So being the guy that they call to have been like, hey,
but Doc is a whip guy.
Doc is a whip guy.
And, you know,
some of the and now he has some of the most iconic, one of the most iconic whip scenes in cinema history.
And one of your favorites.
One of my favorites. So yes, the iconic in cinema history. That's
so if you guys want to know what other movies he has used his bullwhip skills, which he learned back in the early days on the Wild West show.
It's another one of my favorites. Yes. But he whips the shit out of a kid in Abe Lincoln Vampire Slayer, and it's awesome.
You just gave it away. We just told him they had to tune in, dude.
Sorry, I can't help it.
So what do you got on the table?
So I have on the table, I mean, I couldn't find a lot of stuff that had to do with Doc, but the second you mentioned Doc was coming in, I immediately just went down a Western rabbit hole. You know, when you look at the show notes and you see the stuff that we talk about with Doc, you're going to understand why. So I brought in some stuff I have from Tombstone. I got a Cowboys red sash from production that's signed by a bunch of the different Cowboys. Michael Biehn, Pete Steranko, who's a legend in the Western filmmaking industry, and Michael Rooker. And then also I have Michael Biehn's pistol that he actually used to practice with in production. That was purchased from his wife, and met him at a convention and had him sign it. And I don't know, I can send you the video, Matt, and maybe we'll see it in the show notes of him twirling it around just like he did in the scene from Tombstone. Yeah.
Nice. So what you been up to? Anything?
I mean, I've been working a lot. As you know before, I'm still unloading and loading trucks for Hard Out. Man, it's good work. I mean, in all honesty, I feel like I just kind of get paid to train and work out. So, you know, put in my music. And no complaints. But I've noticed that you looked a little fucking banged up, just like
I got a black eye. So I'm living.
I got a black eye.
I know we both have, and facing camera too. But I mean, we're living the Fights with Friends. You know, that we're living up to the name of the show.
We are. The only difference is that my friend helped with my black eye. This guy.
Yeah. And one of the guys here kneed me in the head this week when we were sparring, so I've got this little shiner. But It is what it is, dude.
I mean, I got kneed in the face and then accidentally, and then Steve was like, "No, it's not good enough."
Well, every time we were sparring, and every time
funny.
I'm in mount and I'm hitting you, and then I'm like, oh no, I got to hit.
He's punching me in the face and he's hitting me on the side with the bruise, and he's like, "Oh shit!" He's like, "Sorry, man, I forgot you got a bruise." He's like, "Let me hit you on the other side." I'm like, "Thanks, buddy."
Oh my god, fights with friends. That's
what
it.
we do.
That's what we do. What else is going on? I think I mentioned in a prior episode that I had an audition that I thought I did completely shitty on, but it turned out I got it. So
you did.
I did. I don't want to say what it is yet, but it's pretty cool. But those of us out there that do the audition thing, you know that like if you don't usually hear in a day or two, you spend like the rest of the time
Wondering
thinking
if
that
you got it, and then
that you're a shitty actor, or you know, like, oh God, I gotta take an acting class and get better at this and blah, blah, blah. But I ended up getting it. So that was pretty cool. So hopefully in the future, we'll be able to tell you a little bit more about what that is. So before we bring Doc on, I think we need to thank our sponsors who make it possible to have this show to actually bring Doc on.
absolutely.
Yeah. And so without these folks who we've all worked with personally, they're not just folks who are, you know, paying for ads. These are all people that we know, that we've worked with, we've seen what they do, and we stand behind them, right? So the first is Tactical Black. If you're looking to learn how to shoot safely, guns, not cameras. If you're an actor, performer, and you need to level up in that skill, and you're in the LA area, definitely hit up Tactical Black.
The other great thing I've noticed about Tactical Black is they also teach people how to shoot for different periods. So I've seen them showing how to shoot a revolver. I've seen them showing how to shoot modern tactical style.
Yep.
They are multifaceted. They are a great place to use
for sure
if you need any gun training, weapons training.
Yep. They're awesome. On and off camera, on and off set. We got Metro Camera Cars started by our good friend Joe Baris. I don't know if it's Barisi or Baris, but I'm just going to choose to say Baris.
We're going to say Baris.
Yeah, let's say Baris, I think. But Joe's awesome. He started Metro Camera Cars several years ago to create like a mid-ranged, affordable camera car company. So if you need a rig inside your car, you need a camera car following your car, you need process trailers, whatever, they're your go-to people. They're based here in New York, but they work nationally. So don't be limited by the geography on that. Definitely look up Metro Camera.
I mean, apparently they've got cars, so they travel.
Yes, they can get to you. Who else? We got Fight or Flight Entertainment.
Brett Copes, man, I just love Brett. I wish he would come down here for another workshop soon. He did, Brett.
He just did, but unfortunately, I couldn't go. He was in Brooklyn just recently.
I know, I couldn't make it either.
But that's the point, right? Is that not the point that you couldn't make it, but the point is that he travels and does these amazing primer rigging for human performance workshops. So if you are new to rigging, if you're an experienced rigger and you just want a different perspective, if you're a performer and want to get a primer on rigging safety, I mean, you just Fight or Flight Entertainment is
when I went to his workshop, the one thing I learned was how much went into just being like, hey, you know what? I want to fly this guy. There is so much more into it than just hooking someone up to a thing and ripping a cord and getting them off the ground.
No, he's deep into the science of it, man.
He's awesome.
And then finally, what do we got? We've got Stunt Contact.
Without Stunt Contact, I swear to God, I'd be walking around the street with a sign that says, I am a stunt man. Where can I get a job?
Yeah. No, they're awesome. Their web design is incredible. Their database, their breakdowns, production breakdowns are awesome. Not just the stunt people, but the who's producing it, what's in development, what's in pre-production, what's in production, what's in post-production, who's coordinating it, who the producers are. It's just a great resource, and they can give you daily updates in there. They have multiple subscription levels for daily updates, weekly updates. They got their shit together, man. Good information.
Absolutely.
And of course, none of this would be possible without all the people who listen to us and our patrons on Patreon who are so generous to kick in some bank to help keep this show going.
And especially the Patreons, man, because, we love all of our corporate sponsors, but Patreons, you guys are taking that money right out of your wallet. So it means a lot to us that you guys are have enough faith in us to donate to us. So we really, really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, guys.
We 100% appreciate it. And so before we last words before we go in with Doc is to please like and follow us on social media. We're across all social media platforms.
Follow, and subscribe.
And
right?
subscribe and
all
comment. Comments are good.
Good and bad. We like them all. If they're bad, just remember, we're going to come back at you with them. So.
Yes, that's right. So fighter, I was going to say fighter flight entertainment. I mean, definitely go. What's all the fighting, dude? But Fights with Friends
Right?
Pod, at Fights with Friends Pod across all social media. You'll find us. Please subscribe, like, comment. Let us know what you think of the episodes. And if there's anything you want to see, any guests you want to see, we'll try and get them on. But
and on our regular social media, Sambo Steve, Krav Maga Chef.
Yep.
You guys can find us there.
Yeah, all this stuff will be in the show notes. So without further ado, let's start our interview with the great Doc Duhame.
Here we go, guys.
So here we are with the wonderful, amazing Doc Duhame. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
I mean, it's great.
Guys,
We've talked about legends on this show before, but
come
now
on,
we
man.
finally have one as a guest. I mean, this is
You
great.
guys are trying to make me blush. Hey, it's a pleasure to be here, guys. I'm excited about this. This is going to be fun.
Me too.
Yeah.
There'll be a little. So we're here to talk. We're going to start the conversation with Ray Donovan and the Polish Tony fight, and there'll be a little bit of inside baseball since I worked for you on that show. We should remind everybody watching the show or listening to go to the show notes and watch the fight. We have the link to the fight so people can watch it. They know what we're talking about. We'll have a link to a couple of the Ray Donovan fights. So before we even get into the fight, what's it like coming on to a show that's already had a tone established? There's 5 seasons of Ray Donovan, and then you come in with a character that really hadn't fought much before, because the Terry Donovan, right, he had Parkinson's before. Now he's coming in. We get to finally see
there was the mystery of how great of a boxer he was.
Yeah.
You know? So you basically had to come in here and create this fighting style of someone who hadn't fought for so long, but then still makes everybody been like, oh, that's who Terry Donovan is.
Yeah. So how did the whole thing start for you? Like, how'd you get involved in the show, and then what were you thinking when you started reading the scripts and stuff?
Well, the first 5 seasons were done by Shauna Duggins, who, you can't find anybody better than Shauna. I'll just say she's one of the top coordinators, TV coordinators, not women coordinators, just coordinators. So, she was navigating that ship for 5 seasons and did a terrific job. Lots of fights, lots of fights on it. A lot of great fights. There were a few like world-class fights in that show. You can only do what the writers give you. So, but she did an amazing job on that show. But leading into season 6 and 7, the bywords that I was getting was dirtier, grittier, more dangerous, darker. Kind of talking about the nature of the fights, without talking too much about my background with those kind of fights. I kind of grew up on those fights. That's the kind of stuff that was going on in my life, in my world, and that's probably a chapter for another day. But
a whole nother podcast just about that.
Yeah, a whole other podcast. But it was always something I loved to create. At work. So we went into doing that and exploring that with Liev, who, fortunately Liev was a real super handy guy. And he knew what worked for him most of the time, like to go into directions he was not comfortable going. You had to show him what the expectations were and what the results would be. But he was, he was such a pro when it came to the fights, and he was just really good at it, And he has good movement too, because I used to train with him in New York Jiu-Jitsu. Really?
Yeah. Back in the day, I don't say 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, he used to roll. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He tapped me out a couple times. He did. He put me in an armbar. I tapped out to him once.
Yeah,
Well, he's intimidating, man. He's a big
Fucking
dude.
big guy.
I mean, in that scene, Doc, remember when I was doubling Zach Grenier, and he throat punches me, and I'm sitting on the ground looking up at Liev. I was like genuinely nervous because he just really channeled that I'm gonna fuck you up.
By the way,
attitude.
Anybody who watches that in the show notes, I believe that clip is in there. Steve's reaction is fucking phenomenal. I got to give you credit for that, dude. That was great. That was
terrific. That was I think that was like, I don't remember if that was just a one take deal. I think it was, wasn't it? It was like, guys, it's not going to get any better.
It was quick. It was 3 takes, and then I remember, like, for the last one, you came out and said, "Can you hit him a little harder?" And Liev was like, "I'm hitting him pretty hard," because he was hitting me. He was hitting me in the sternum, right? Because it was a low angle, so he just bam.
He could get away with it.
Yeah, totally. I was like, yeah, go for it. That was fun, though. Yeah. That was a fun day, man.
Yeah, that little bit worked. See, that's one of the great things about coordinating a show like that. You know, working with guys like you, working with guys like Liev. You know, it wasn't some big gnarly fight. It was just like, you know, one knife end to the throat, and you know, but it was such a, you know, it turned out to be such a great little piece. You know, it was very satisfying.
They used it. They used it in so many. It was little side story. They used it in a whole bunch of previously on segments, right?
Yeah.
That I don't even know if I told you this, but I never got paid for those, right? So during COVID, we had nothing to do. I watched all the episodes. I'm like, oh, I'm in that one. I'm in that one. I filed a bunch of claims, and I got paid for a whole bunch more episodes where they used that clip because it was used so many times,
right?
You know?
Oh, previously on. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you guys drinking?
Oh, well, we can't really say because we're trying to get beer sponsors. We're trying to get a beer sponsor.
But it is beer.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
he's drinking a 3.5. I'm drinking a 9.5.
Yeah. See, you're much younger. You know.
What do you got? What do you got?
I just got a cup of coffee. But wait a second. I do. But the label is turned around. But I do have a bottle.
Oh, look at that! That's what
I do have a bottle of sweetener. Now, some of you might, if you've ever worked with me, you recognize the shape of the bottle, and
yes,
you probably know what that is. But
I do.
Okay. Now we'll be even. Now I'll know what you guys are talking about.
Very cool. So anyway, so you're coming on the show, and they wanted a darker, more grittier tone for the fights.
Yeah. So, and then they started writing stuff like this Polish Tony fight.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that.
And it's the beginning of like a 4-episode arc.
Let me pause here for 1 minute.
Sure,
I happen to have that page of the script with all my notes and our notes from that day. But let me read a bit of it. So it's interior Brooklyn warehouse night. Terry, fists raised high, stands in the hay bale ring opposite a big bearded man, Polish Tony. The fight is several minutes in. Both men shine with sweat. Terry already has a black eye and a bloody nose. Polish Tony is easily on top. He catches Terry with a flurry of heavy blows. You know, and it goes on and on and on. Terry comes back slugging. Catches Polish Tony. Tony counters with a short right hand. Rocks Terry. Terry responds with a left hook. Toe to toe. Fucking brutal. One of the things we've gone through a couple of fight scripts here, and this one's pretty descriptive, right? But some of the other episodes, it's a couple of lines, right?
Right.
So you as the coordinator, like this one, you have a lot to go on, and then some of the others, there's less to go on, right?
Yeah.
So was there, when you started coming up with, how Terry Sullivan's fighting style?
Donovan.
Did I say Sullivan?
You've already had too many beers, dude.
My bad.
Yeah, that's right.
How did you come up with it? Because it's such a great, inside traditional boxing style, Irish boxing style fighting that reminds me of that old timey, boxing. Is that what you like? Where did you decide that that's what it was going to be?
Well, there's such a tradition in boxing, especially from Irish fighters, that they go toe to toe, they toe the line, and then go toe to toe. And there is a machismo factor, in that culture, same the way there is in Mexican fighting. These guys are there to fight. First of all, that what you read there, that was a revision, because it was like, I haven't, basically I talked to the showrunner and said, I David Hollander said, I have an idea what this fight should be, but the fight in and of itself should be a full story, as any good fight should be. Even coming into the fight a few minutes, it will actually work better than going through all the beginning of the fight, stuff that you always go through. So
right,
just
picking
it up mid-action. Yeah. And, I wanted him to be, and also to really make the fight kind of count, you really need to know a little bit of the backstory. Like Terry has, the character of Terry, played by Eddie Marsan, has Parkinson's, but he had operations earlier episodes. They put something in his head, in his brain, to stop that. But he also had a thing right here, which you really can't see well in the fight. It's there. I'm not sure what side it's on, but it's there. And it sends a signal continually and keeps and eliminates all the Parkinson's symptoms. So, okay, that's a little bit backstory. But if you know that that's the case, and everybody's warned him about what he's doing, it has a little more weight. That's the thing I love. But doing a show like this, where you've got really, really good writers, you end up with action that's full of story points that it's your job as a coordinator to fulfill. You have to have those story points play out. And we see the whole thing with the Parkinson's device in later episodes. But for this one, it's just like, at the end of this thing, man, he's back in his glory. And certainly everything leading up to the fight was like, oh, you're fighting Polish Tony, Tony the Pony?
Played by Tim Lasik, who's
Tim
real
Lasik,
fighter to begin with. He was like a Division I wrestler, old school UFC guy, bare knuckle guy.
Yeah, he was a gift. He was a gift on that episode. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know really what to expect. Everybody was like, oh, he's a good guy. He comes on. We did 2 or 3 rehearsal days for that, just for that fight.
We were lucky, right? Because a lot of times on TV, there's no rehearsal. And with you, which is, I guess this leads into a question about, was this something that you pushed for? But we had pretty much, right, 2 rehearsals per episode, right? We would come in with me, you, and Tim in this case, work out the choreography that you had in your mind. Mm-hmm. The next one, Eddie would join us. We would teach him it, and he would then kind of give his, I think Terry would do it this way or that way. He would bring the character to it. Then the next time we did it would be on set.
Yeah, that's correct. And we did that with, was it Victor? I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Vic Playhouse?
Yep,
Playhouse. Yeah. And then Jay Adams and Hank Strong and Kyle Zippernick, all different guys that fought him in different episodes. But the whole arc of his journey was like, first, like this episode, and this fight, which I think was certainly the best and the longest and the most detailed of all the fights. He gets his manhood back, sort of. It's a manhood with a false bottom that's going to, collapse on him. But
there's a line in the screenplay, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a line in the screenplay that describes him as feeling like he was not a has-been, but a never was.
A never was, yeah. Yeah.
And this one, this was like the antidote to that.
And the only time he's ever felt good about himself was when he was fighting. And so, he has to go back. It's like, it's almost like, somebody who's a heroin addict and their life is falling apart and they go back and start using heroin.
What I noticed
again.
when I watched those episodes is that his demeanor in that season wasn't better because he had the cure from Parkinson's, that momentary cure. It was because he was fighting.
Yes. Yeah.
And
definitely.
that was done very, very well. And I was like, oh, he doesn't care. He's fighting. He's happy about that.
He's happy about that. Right. And you're right when he said it's worth the risk. It's worth the risk of, having all these Parkinson's symptoms again. He just didn't care. Anyway, so, going into it, that was basically, so, there were just a few lines for that fight to start with, And I went in and said, well, I need a little bit more to chew on. Can I give you my ideas about what this fight should be? And I basically said, he just needs to be getting his ass kicked when this fight opens up. And if I remember this correctly, there's a moment where he gets knocked down. And there's sort of a moment on his face. And remember doing all this intentionally. There was a moment on his face that says, now is the time for you to decide to really be you again. And when he got up, it was a different fight.
Yep.
He
that
started.
That scene was amazing, by the way.
He falls down. He falls face down to camera. Yep.
Right.
Totally.
Right. All very, very intentional. He has that moment.
And in the mirror, the bookend of that, right, is the fight with Kyle Zipperneck, the Beast, where he
was a beast, wasn't he?
Oh my God, he's huge, right? And where the microchip is damaged, the whole thing is damaged, and he again falls face down, but this time he comes up Parkinsonian Terry.
He's got the shake. Well, I like also that it kind of like there were a few hits before that.
Yeah.
There were a few hits before that where it was like bing, and then you saw it. It wasn't a big shot. It was just a little shot. And then all of a sudden you saw his arm tuck in and start to shake.
Yeah.
And then, man, and then, boy.
But you're right, Doc. He comes up totally crazy with that insane laugh.
And you wonder what he's going to do.
I mean, I know how I felt watching that scene. What was it like watching him do that for the first time on set? Just like for the viewers, we'll put the link to that fight in the show notes too. So you guys should definitely watch it.
And the fight with Vic was like, oh, he might, he beats this guy too, who's, lean and fast. And, you can tell Vic had a fight background. One of the reasons he got the gig was because he knew how to hold his hands properly.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, the first thing anybody that has a boxing background or a fight background, you just say, hey, just get in fighting stance, hold your hands up. And you can tell right away whether or not they have a fight background or not.
We always used to say that it's so easy to just ask someone if they know how to fight or not, and be like, "Okay, let me see your fighting stance."
Yeah.
You can tell a lot just by that one question. Been like, "Get in your fighting stance."
Yeah, get in your fighting stance.
Yep.
And that was a tricky part too, because I'm meeting, back in Los Angeles, I know what everybody can do. My knowledge of the community is, 90% of what you bring to the job, or certainly, I'll say 50% of what you bring to the job. So you got to get the right people in front of the camera. But with a lot of the guys in New York, because, I was new to New York, so to speak, but hiring out of New York, it wasn't like I brought the gang with me.
Mm-hmm.
And which was great because I got to meet everybody. So, you and Jared and Tony Vincent and,
I know we all appreciate it because
all those
a lot
guys,
of people like to bring their gang. So it was nice to have someone come down here and hire all the locals and get to know us. And, it was awesome.
And it was great to meet everybody. I feel like it's my second home, New York, even though I grew up there, but you know what I mean? I mean, in terms of the stunt culture and stunt community.
And so, you're Long Island originally, correct?
Yeah, Huntington, Long Island. My boxing coach was at PAL was Capobianco, same guy that trained Jerry Cooney. Jerry Cooney's out of Huntington. And, Jerry and I were at the same time. They were at the same time for a little while. And but he was already way ahead of me. He's a little older than me. And but I never got, I never got the I never had like the management in terms of a father or anything like that. So, I was bouncing and not getting in trouble. Well, I end up getting in trouble, but it was a big reason I left New York was because like, well, I'm just going to join the service and get out of here before it gets worse.
So, it wasn't like bounty hunters chasing you like Django Unchained.
No.
So to that point, you're on Ray Donovan and you've got this series of fights, and they were super well received even by reviewers. Like I have a couple of like New York Magazine commented on the Polish Tony fight, said this is a quote. I will. This is Vulture. Actually, the link will be in the show notes for the listeners and people watching. But Terry Donovan having a Guinness for breakfast was lamenting. Oh, here's where the never was. Lamenting being a never was more than a has been. Terry needs to fight, and so he jumps into the underground fight club he learned about last week with both feet. At first, he looks like he's going to literally be killed by the massive fighter named Tony the Pony. But Terry turns the tables, landing a few punches, body blows, uppercuts. By the way, those uppercuts were insane.
All the uppercuts. I don't know why, but
fight.
For some reason, like just all the uppercuts in every fight just were so they landed so sweet.
And it goes on to say it was really well choreographed and directed. The fight scene with some excellent makeup work as well. So this was from Vulture on.
Oh, very cool.
Yorker. Yeah.
I think it's also just a credit to you and how you set everything up. Throwing inside tight punches and uppercuts are really, really hard to sell on film. And you guys found a phenomenal way to not only make the punch be seen as it was coming and have the reaction happen from such a tight punch. Man, that was awesome.
Yeah. Thanks. He as we played around on our first day in there, Steve, we I don't know if you remember, but we tried a bunch. We kind of put the phone camera on a bunch of different angles with him, and because of his stature, he didn't have to like do anything super awkward because he doesn't have a fight background. Yeah, he didn't have a fight background, so he didn't have to do anything super awkward to sell that punch. It was just coming from almost like right here, boom. And there were some things that he looked great doing. There were some things that he didn't look terrific doing. But the thing that he got right away was he got the rhythm of like, and the reality of like, okay, I just hit this guy a couple times. He's a little bit in trouble, and then boom, 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 boom. Like he threw some fast punches, and then like he threw a couple quick ones, and then they registered. He threw a couple quick more, and they registered, and he just had almost like the instincts of a fighter without having been a fighter. And plus, we were keeping him in the box too, though.
Yeah, but I remember you saying like, before he first showed up, you were saying like, we don't really know what he can do, what he can't do, and I mean, and for the people listening, when you're working with an actor, you don't always know what their abilities are. They're not necessarily always cast for that, but he killed it, right? He did. Of the 4 fights that I was involved in, basically 3 of them was all him. The only one that I got on camera for was the big bar fight.
Right.
But he was just awesome. And I remember even he said at some point in one of the rehearsals, like, this is great. I love being here with you guys because usually I'm just the man in a suit doing, playing the lawyer, the doctor, the whatever. And he's getting to let loose, kind of like a character like Terry, right?
Yeah. I mean, man, he was, after. So we were sitting at the catering table with Eddie afterwards, and he and I were talking about it. And he said to me, hey, is what you guys do like always this hard, man? Like I'm just like exhausted, and I'm like he wasn't really hitting me, but I'm like, I feel like I just been through it, and
that day, remember, that day was insane. The warehouse down in Red Hook it was like 100+ degrees outside.
Yeah. We were upstairs. Yeah.
We were upstairs. It was hot. as balls in there, and
Yeah.
they were passing out water to everybody. Please drink, please drink, please drink.
Right.
You had the ice packs as soon as like they said cut, like ice packs all over Eddie's back and
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, it was like a real fight, man.
I think
it was
one
like
thing
a
that
real fight.
one of the things that I've noticed, at least when I'm a stunt guy, is when you do things on film in order to sell it, in your head, you think you're doing it good. And then the director's like, no, I need bigger, sell it wider, go.
Right.
And in your head, you're like, I must look like a complete asshole throwing a punch like this on film. And then you go and you look at it and it's like, bang. And you're just like, oh shit. So there's like this whole, it's kind of crazy how you have to oversell something. And even in your head, you're like, this is going to look so ridiculous. And then when you see it on film and how tight it really is,
right.
I think a lot of people don't realize how over exaggerated the small little things are to actually sell.
That's that's on the, the learning curve of great fight guys and, good stunt guys, when I started, what we started with, whatever other skills you might be bringing to the party, but we all learned like your basic barroom brawl fight, like big punches reaching out, you know what I mean? Like these big punches that
high, long across the eyebrows.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And, ridiculous in the real world, utterly ridiculous in the real world. But man, on camera and those, if you knew how to do those fights right, man, you look unbelievably powerful and strong and dangerous.
For you, just to dial it back, so when you first started, at the Wild West show at Universal, correct?
Yeah.
So this was before you were doing screen fights.
I wasn't even in the guild yet. I was just Screen Actors Guild. Man, I had only been in town like 3 months. I'd never been to LA or didn't know anybody. And I was like,
and you got thrown right into it on that live show. On those live shows, they don't fuck around.
Back then we were doing 8 shows a day,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But yeah, that was where we learned that kind of fighting. Definitely.
But what I was thinking was, what's the learning curve? Because I know from doing live shows, right? You have to play to the nosebleed seats, like everybody has to be able to see it. And then you kind of come to fighting for camera. You have to dial it back, get a little tighter, but not too tight, or else it'll look like poop. So, what was that like for you? That transition from doing the live shows to screen?
I was lucky because I worked with great fight guys, I mean, just, your standard fight guys, not martial artists or anything, but guys that did movie fights all the time. And a guy named Frank Orsatti, who was one of the great legends of, like that whole period of time where, movie action was being reinvented in LA. It was like the beginning of Stunts Unlimited. Those first 10 years of Stunts Unlimited, moving into the next 10, which I started being a part of, and the thing was, so those guys got all that, and they could see that I was doing everything really big, and that I was also doing the acting component where I was just raging crazy guy as the bad guy, and they said, well, take all that rage and just don't let them see it. Try not to let them see it. They can see it in your eyes. They can see it in your stance. Just, dial it back where it's more interior. And I for some reason, I instantly understood what they meant, and so it wasn't an issue for me.
I had
some guys never get it.
It's funny. My first time working, I had a hard time making that adjustment, and it wasn't until after we had shot the previs and everything, and I was sitting on the back of the trailer, that the guy who was shooting it, Don Lee, came up to me and made a comment, and he's like, I need you to be, and I teach self-defense and close quarters weapons combat, and he was like, I needed you to be the guy that you teach your students to defend themselves against, and my shoulders dropped and I shook my head, and I was so upset with myself that for 4 days I couldn't understand that that's what he fucking wanted from me. And I was like, and he looks at me and he goes, you just understood everything I've been trying to tell you for 4 days. He goes, you're never going to forget this. And he goes, and that's what I wanted. And it stuck with me. And I've always been able to now make that adjustment because of that one small comment.
Yeah. And when you get it, it's like, oh, I got it now. Don Lee is a great guy, by the way.
Yeah. Don was awesome. He worked with me again.
Dude.
We shot a previs for 4 days. And he gave me a lot of great notes and a lot of things that my first previs I ever shot. First thing I ever really did, first stunt job I ever got was given to me by Brewster and Don, and I worked with Evan. And it was an entire 4 days of basically just phenomenal great advice. And one of them was that.
Those are the best days, man. I mean, the best days are when, they think they're going to use you and nobody does, and you're a new guy, or, you're kind of at the beginning of your career and you're sitting around with all these guys and you're keeping your mouth completely shut because you don't want to say the wrong thing. And, and they start telling stories and they start telling stories. Yeah. And I don't know exactly why, but all those guys are great storytellers. Yeah. Ronnie Rondell and Dick Zeiker and Wilder and Orsatti and Tommy Huff and all those guys. I'm throwing out names that probably a lot of guys don't know.
Terry Leonard.
Yeah, exactly. These were the guys. These are the fathers of modern stunts, really, because they were all unlimited guys. Terry Leonard, of course, Terry Leonard.
But you worked with him on Quick and the Dead, correct?
Yeah. I got him to myself for like 3 weeks. I think it was just me and him going back and forth from the set. From the hotel, because I was the only stunt guy there for a while. And it was just like, so Terry, what was it like on the, and I'd ask him questions about all the movies he'd been on, and, and what was it like when you were breaking in? And when, I mean, he would just talk.
Now, was that the first time you worked with Gene Hackman? Because he was also in that.
No,
Did you
I
work with him before that?
I was, yeah. I don't remember the chronology of the shows, but the first
neither
show,
do I. That's why I was.
Yeah, the first show was Narrow Margin.
Okay.
And it was a very unwatchable movie. I mean, it was a great experience for me because it was all fights on top of a train, speeding through the British Columbia, wilderness, and crazy car chase that was way more dangerous than it looked. You ever want to talk about that one? But
talk about it.
Come on, talk about it. Of course we want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh well,
that's why we're here. Take us down the rabbit hole.
Well, this is my first show, Double and Gene, right? So, I want to do a good job. Plus, I'm working for Glenn Wilder, so I know I'm going to do a good job. You know what I mean? Like he's fathering me through anything that I need, that if I need that, so
it's kind of great when you work with someone who you feel like won't let you fail.
Yes.
You feel supported by that. That's great. Yeah,
absolutely. But we were in slightly uncharted territory because we were depending on rigging to keep people safe on top of the train, but rigging that you really couldn't see. I mean, like wire removal was not a keystroke back then.
Right.
This was like 89. And so we're trying to hide cables and stuff like that to keep the talent safe, and things like Nyko press was still relatively untested in terms of supporting human weight on impact.
For those who don't know what that is, can you just throw out a
just for the people listening who don't know what that is,
Well, that's when using cables to put a loop in a cable or to join cables, which I don't think they do that anymore, joining cables with Nyko clip. But it's a little clip that goes over the wire, and then there's a device which squeezes that clip. And consequently, that loop is safe for holding weight. But, like I said, those things were relatively untested for stunt rigging. Like, there weren't riggers yet in terms of stunt rigging, in 89. There were effects guys. And then you had to depend on the effects guys to keep you safe. And we were doing things where we're dropping off the side of the train, hanging onto, a guy's legs, and, the train is going over a trestle. It's those kind of things where if there was a if there was a
there was that scene
malfunction.
where someone was hanging off the train and it went over a bridge, right?
Right, exactly.
That was crazy.
Yeah, that was me and a Canadian stunt guy. I can't remember his name, but we had to fall into that position. You know what I mean? Like impact fall. Anyway, the big car chase in that, well, it wasn't a car chase really. I was speeding down a switchback logging road, and there was a helicopter following, shooting at us. And the thing that made it really gnarly was on the downhill side, I mean, it was like this, with a tree like every 20 feet. So it was like, you get off of that road and you're not going to make it. You're not going to survive. Because they were switchbacks, they go down one side and then there'd be a big, tube that goes to the other side. So that always on the uphill side, there was a big trench. It was like 5 feet wide and about 5 feet deep because it's for the water runoff because we were up in British Columbia. So if you hang a tire on the downhill side, you're dead. And if you hang a tire at the speeds we were going, to hang a tire on the upside, it's just going to be you might not die, but it's going to be a horrible wreck. And Glenn's wife, who was a stunt woman at the time, was doubling Ann Archer. And I mean, I just had 2 or 3 close. I mean, one was an unscheduled turnover. Like it was like take 4, I'm coming in, sliding, a switchback. I did 1, did 2, did 3, because the helicopters, they're lining up the helicopter and the vehicle. And we had to, feather it to get it right. So here it comes. It was take 4 or 5. I don't remember exactly, but came along, did exactly the same thing, got sideways and the tires caught and boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. It turned over like 2.5 times and ended up on its hood. Ended up on its roof. And when we crawled out, we were this close to the edge of the, like one more half turn, and we would have been off the road down the hill.
Holy moly.
And, what had happened was we figured it out later was because these were dirt roads. So, my line was the same each time. You go into a curve like that, you're definitely going to be picking the same line, So what had happened was a lot of dirt had been scraped off of like rocks that were kind of started poking up, and there was just enough catch where it turned the vehicle over.
Wow.
And nobody anticipated that, but we were okay. We climbed out, took some photos.
Amazing. I mean,
and speaking of
considering that, now that we're talking about car wrecks, I mean, we might as well bring it up because it's super relevant. But there was just a crazy accident on set this week where with the armored truck and the SUV
real
rolled
bad.
over. And we watched people fly out of it.
I mean, there'll be we don't
I got goosebumps. Like just shit, man. I mean,
it's too early to even know.
I'm not talking shit. I have nothing to say about it outside of the fact that I hope everybody involved is going to come out okay. I know a few of those injuries were extremely fucking horrible, and I just wish the best recovery for everybody.
It's tragic, and what is bothersome is like the blame game that starts happening, we don't know anything about what
we don't
started
know
that.
anything.
Yeah, we don't know anything about the domino effect. What happened? Was it dry?
I think a lot of times when we see accidents like that, there's always those warriors who are like, I could have prevented this. And then it's like, maybe you fucking couldn't have. When it comes to what we do, we can take as much preparation and as much practice and as much forewarning, and we can think of all the ins and all the outs of everything that could possibly happen. And then in that moment, sometimes shit just happens. And there's a reason why you have all of the professionals. You should have medical staff, and you should have everybody rating so that when shit happens, you're ready for it. Well, shit happening should never be a surprise.
Planning for failure is
the way you should always go.
The only thing that it is always worth talking about is when you hear about something like this, which is very unfortunate, of course, is that for stunt professionals, when is it time? Completely hypothetical. Nothing about that wreck.
Sure.
When is it time to say no?
Mm-hmm.
When is it time to say either, hey, we need to rethink this, or barring them not willing to do that, when is it time to sign out? The problem with this isn't everybody, certainly everybody that's coordinated, and most everybody that does stunts has been faced with, it's like, I'm not quite sure about this. Everybody else seems to be okay with it. I don't want to be the one to pull the trigger and go, hey, we need to take more time to think about this. So when is it time to speak up? I mean, that's something everybody needs to start answering for themselves. And for me, it was when my best friend got burned on Iron Eagle so badly we thought he was going to die.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
You know?
I didn't know
and it
anything.
was like,
That's crazy.
you know, so after that,
What was the burn? What was the scene?
It was it was a fictitious Arab country, and the whole setup, and the sun was coming in on a jet fighter and was blowing everything up, and it was in Israel.
So he was on the ground.
Pardon me?
He was on the ground.
My buddy, yeah, and he was running between a couple of explosions. The explosions had gone off. They were unbelievably huge. I mean, like, there were these troop tents that got
the effects of that movie were insane. Like that was, and for those of you who don't know, Iron Eagle is a fighter movie. So we're talking about a guy coming in on a jet, shooting missiles from his jet at people running while they're exploding. So these are the explosions we're talking about. That this guy,
copy that. And but there was a problem bringing exotic stuff into Israel. So the effects guys,
you guys were shooting on location in Israel back then.
Yeah, at a military base called Pamrachim. Yeah, 1985.
And the late Lou Gossett Jr., obviously, if those of you who didn't know, Iron Eagle.
Yeah, yeah. So what happened in hindsight, we know now what happened was basically 55-gallon drums wrapped with 100-grain primer cord with a cube of C4 on the top in the middle of each one of these tents. Boom, boom, they go up. We're waiting for it to die down. It dies down. I light Keith. Off he goes. He's doing a partial. He's doing back and an arm, running, in the midst of all this fire. And what had happened was, when you use concussive explosives, what it essentially does is for a millisecond, it blows the oxygen out of a large part of the area where the fuel, and so now you have all this unburnt fuel on the ground, and it reignited as Keith was running through it, and he got caught in this inferno.
Wow.
Yeah.
So on that, when you just explained how big this was, if you were to shoot this now in modern time, like now,
right?
How would that be shot differently? With all those,
man.
So
that's a whole other podcast.
No, so that's why I feel like that now to get those same results is not as just, we'll just some C4, a little bit of gas, and we'll make it work.
Well, I remember on Ray Donovan, we were talking about safety, and you said to me, it's when people are doing the quote unquote simple gags where they get complacent and they, we've done this a million times, it'll be fine. And you said to me, it's on the simple ones where you need to take pause, take a step back, and recheck everything, because that's when the errors happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a big part of it. But to answer that question, Paulie, I would say the difference is testing. Mm-hmm. We test now. Mm-hmm. We know exactly what people are getting into, and more or less, I'll just say that's the big answer. But you're right, man. Steve, I got to tell you, somebody, Lauren Janes, one of the co-founders of the Stunts Association, Double Steve McQueen, brilliant stuntman. We were working one time, and I don't remember what show it was or anything, but I was diving through a window, like just a window. I mean, open window, like the window was open. I'm just diving through the hole. And he goes, this is what you got to watch out for. You got to watch out for that you're not too high and you don't hit your head on the top of the sill.
Catch your legs on the way out.
A friend of mine, oh, that's a good idea. A friend of mine did that one time, years ago, and ended up paralyzed. And the guy was like a gymnast or something, but it was just a freak thing, And that always
spiked his head. He spiked his head on the window frame.
I saw an accident in a video of where a guy jumped out the window, but he didn't engage his core and lift his legs up, and his legs hit the window, and he just went down.
Well,
instead of going
probably,
out, he
caught
his legs and just slid down the fucking side of the house. I was like,
dude, if you just looked at what were we just talking about, the first show with Hackman? Yeah, that happened to me in Narrow Margin. I was diving out of a window of like a train stop out in the wilderness, And what happened was my knee pads caught the windowsill and just slapped me to the ground, and my coat came over my head. But I got up and kept going, and it's in the movie, because it looked gnarly. It looked like I hit my,
Speaking of potential accidents, when we were researching you for this episode, we found a video on YouTube from the Miami Vice live show.
Yes, we did.
Where you're doing a high fall off of a platform, but the video was of the platform failing and almost falling. That's what the video
almost
was
looked like you jumped off right before.
We'll put the link to this YouTube video in the show notes. In fact, it's got your name on it, Doc Duhame, like high fall.
Really?
I have
Doc Duhame almost dying, high fall.
I have a question that has been racking my fucking brain.
Right.
How do you do the bullets in the water when they're shooting? Like pop, 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 and then there's boom in the water. There's like the of the bullets. Where does that fucking come from?
In the live show.
In the live show.
They're just tubes that are floating. They've got flotation just under the surface, and they're just air hits. There's nothing in them already.
That's cool.
Air pushing water up. It is cool, isn't it, man? That was the first show. That was the first live show that had all that stuff in it.
Yeah,
and
they had jet skis and all this crazy stuff, right?
I would say in general, even as a TV show, Miami Vice had a lot of the first stuff in it. So, like as a live show, that just makes sense. That it's just
You remember John Radulovich, Steve? He was a producer.
Oh yeah, on Ray Donovan.
Yeah. He was a first AD on that show. He was on the Miami Vice TV show, and he's got some stories, man. You should have him. You should have him on here.
We should.
Was it produced by Michael Mann? Michael Mann had I think something to do with the original TV series.
Yeah,
that's why I was so excited when he redid it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is going to be great because it's Michael Mann because he was in the with the original.
Yeah.
But bringing it back to train chases and Ray Donovan, you were in one of my favorite movies growing up, Runaway Train. And it's like, and that's John Voight, who you got to work with on Ray Donovan again.
Right.
But tell us about what you do on Runaway Train, and did you talk to Voight about that movie when you worked with him on
Ray Donovan? Right? Like how to? Sometimes it's so hard.
Oh yeah. Well, I would joke with him, and I would joke with him like he'd finish like a take of something, and I'd say the John Voight of Runaway Train would have never done it like that. He'd go, get the fuck out of here. But yeah, I was, we were just a bunch of young stunt guys. I don't know what year that movie was. Couldn't have been very late, like 82 or something.
That was 80. Well, it released in 85. I have in my note, my
85 or 84
right
or something.
I don't know when you were shooting it. Yeah.
But Lauren James was a stunt coordinator, and there was the fight scene, the boxing scene in the movie. And there was a bunch of, crowd stuff where guys started to fight and stuff like that. We were just ND, inmates in the fight stuff. But I did work with what was the Latin fighter's name?
Danny Trejo.
Yeah,
now he's got the taco restaurants all over.
He's so funny.
Yeah, and he works every day. You know what I mean? Like the guy's had an unbelievable career, but Lauren was coordinating, and I've actually talked to Trejo about this. He doesn't really remember. I was like, okay, but we worked during that day that he was, because he was getting his head pounded. And he was letting it happen, because he was just wanted to do a good job. He wanted to do a great job. And I said, it's okay if you, a little bit, you know what I mean? And
there's a reason why he doesn't remember it.
Like in that fight with Max Holloway when he was fighting that guy and he shows him in the middle of the fight like how to fucking block punches.
Yeah, right.
Taking a pounding. I mean, I remember in season 7 of Ray Donovan, in that scene in Brooklyn where there's the handoff of they're meeting for the handoff of the money and the stock, the bonds or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I remember when John Voight did his own fall, right? And he startled the crap out of everybody because it looks so real.
Right.
He just dropped like a sack of potatoes to the concrete, and he got up. He had his own knee pads and stuff. I mean, this guy is like not a spring chicken, but was just like a pro. 80. Yeah, just dropping to the concrete like a pro.
84 now.
How did you, Long Island Boy, become? Were you like into? I mean, you do so many westerns. You're the bullwhip expert. You've trained Jamie Foxx bullwhip, and you've trained Harrison Ford bullwhip on Crystal Skull, by the way, which is why we have a Crystal Skull.
I saw that. You told me you were going to have that.
Fucking fanboy favorite movie of mine, dude. I fucking love Abe Lincoln Vampire Slayer. I am a huge movie prop collector, and I have been looking for that musket axe. Ever to put in my collection, and I can't find it. That movie's awesome, and I'm sorry, but I just love the scene when you were whipping the shit out of that little kid.
Yeah, but I talked to that kid for years after that movie. Like we would, I'd get a phone call from him, and he'd leave a voicemail. I'd call him back, and we'd chit chat. He was a good kid.
How do you shoot a whip? Like obviously we know how you shoot a stack punch. How do you shoot a whip? Right. How do you shoot a whip shot? Like, and then let's just go into the like, how did what's his face get whipped in Passion of the Christ with the spikes in the?
Man, I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody about that. I used to work with Mel all the time on his movies and stuff, but I just haven't had an opportunity to ask him. But I know what I do. I like in Django, for instance. I had the prop. I found a prop maker who was also a whip maker, and and I had him completely make a real bullwhip, identical to my real bullwhip, one of my real bullwhips, the one I was going to use. And he made it out of felt. And it was like, well, that's never going to work, And I was like, yeah, it's going to work because it's still going to be the physics of the bullwhip. It's going to be thicker on one end. The weight will transfer down to the end of the whip, or the momentum of
the sound.
The force,
I mentioned this before. That sound is the sound barrier breaking. Right?
That's correct. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So when it came to whipping Kerry Washington, I was really hitting her in the back with the end of the felt whip.
He was the one doing the whipping in that. That's what we were talking about before. So you were actually awesome.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Well, no, Django, please.
Because it's the other Ellis brother that's doing the whipping in that scene when he's reading from the Bible.
Oh, well, not with Kerry Washington. I was whipping Kerry Washington, and he was that was the other scene where that was the scene where Jamie shows up and whips the brother, and then the other brother falls face first into the face first. By the way,
and you do that epic you do that epic fall off the horse. Oh my god.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
And the blood spray over the flowers.
The squid.
As you
Didn't that work?
Man, that
so
worked
good.
so well.
Yeah.
But so you were going to say, so with the whipping, like, so Jamie Foxx was it when he was whipping him on the ground, that was the felt whip.
It was a combination because some of the stuff the guy he was hitting was off camera. But what I taught Jamie to do was a couple of like standard kind of whip things. One is like over the head crack, one was, but when it came to it, he just went, which worked
Yeah.
way better than anything.
And he
we
threw a couple
practiced.
backhands in there too. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Well, it
know,
looked
I
like
just-
somebody who didn't know how to use it.
he was like,
which
how's
is
it
great.
feel, motherfucker?
Yeah.
Well, you know, but that energy was way more important, you know, than
Right.
actual whip technique, you know. So,
But working for Tarantino, because I mean, what's it like working for Tarantino? Because the rep is that he really pushes the stunt guys pretty hard, right?
yeah, listen, he across the board just does not suffer fools, and yeah, he's definitely his own man and a unique guy, you know.
Sure.
But when it comes to being a director, he gets what he wants. You know, if everybody's set up to do, 50 people out in the cotton field, and he says, I want to go in the barn and shoot some inserts, then that's what they do, and no one
Right.
says anything about it, because
Right.
why would you mess with that guy's process? That's all I can
for
say.
sure, for sure.
You
for
know?
sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I did that saddle fall 5 times,
Wow.
That's a big fall off a horse to do 5 times.
Yeah. I mean, it was the first thing that happened was they were like way off to the right, and I'm falling off the left side. They knew that, and exactly why they were over there, I'm not sure. They were over there for the first 3 takes, and I finally went, hey, or I think I went to Jeff Dashno. I said, hey, and then they brought the camera around, and so the horse, I'm riding the horse this way, and then the camera was here, which is where, let's see, right here, right there, so that it was off to my left over here. And then they ended up using take 4, which was, and then take 5, I got a little too deep and I took out the camera, so they couldn't use it. But
I was gonna say, because the one they use, you nail it. It's like right in front of the lens. You're right there. Boom.
Yeah, and I love that. He was using one camera, no monitor, so I couldn't see what I was doing. Using one film camera, like he was being old school in the whole movie. So I wish I could have seen what I was doing. I probably would have done a couple of things a little differently. But, I was so locked in because, first of all, the horse is galloping.
Holy shit. So that was just all one run. While the horse was running, there was no like different cut to the horse slowing down. And that was all just, holy shit, dude.
Yeah, I just, I had great stunt guys there to help me because I'm not really a cowboy, I'm just not. I mean,
had you ever fallen off a horse like that before?
Not like that, no.
Wow.
I mean, I'm going off backwards, and usually it doesn't matter, or you can trim off some speed. Or cowboy guys, they live for that stuff. They're great at it, but I'm not a cowboy. I mean, I can ride and I can fake it a little bit, but if it wasn't for like Troy Gilbert and Dashna and Freddie Heiss, those guys nursed me through it. They knew it was a featured gag and that, they didn't want to see me, in a cast the next day. So the thing about that is, you can't put a hand down or you can't put a foot down because you'll break your foot, you'll break your hand or your shoulder, or because you're going too fast. You'll just crumple into the hand you put down,
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get all stretched out so I could basically take it on my take it on my torso, and I think I had a little neoprene on or something, whatever I could put on, but I was feeling that one 8 months later with a deep breath. I'd be like, still feeling that one.
So what you've mentioned several times now, the guys that have ushered you through, mentored you through stuff. Talk about your transition to coordinating from performing. What did you bring with you, and what was that like?
Can I ask one quick performing question before we get in there?
Yeah,
just
go for
really
it.
Quick. So not really a question. It's more of Steve had a little bit of a fanboy moment, so I'm gonna take mine. You talked about working with Mel Gibson and Payback. There is literally a reaction that you do in Payback that I probably deliver at least 2 to 3 days a week. And I think about the scene. So I had no idea, like literally until 2 days ago when I started doing more research into IMDb, that you were the guy who delivered one of my favorite scenes in Payback. So the car pulls up and Lucy Liu sticks her head out the window and she says like, blah, 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 fat boy. And you just haul out, knock her out. And then you just turn down and you look and you just go, and you walk and you just walk away. You're like, right. I must do that so many times when I turn around and I say something and I just look back and I'm like, nah, and I just walk away.
Yeah, right.
It was so great. And I also wanted to just that we talk about all the different types of stunt people in here. And then there are certain stunt people like you, like when you see your reel, you're not just a stunt guy in a fight. There's always a little bit of a character to you. Yeah. And I wanted to say that is a huge testament to how you deliver and how you sell everything that you do. Is that when you're the stunt guy where they were like want a little bit of screen time for, that's something to really, really strive for. And I just wanted to compliment you on that you have so much of that in a way that's just like, wow, you must really understand how to deliver and how to fucking really give the camera what it wants for them to say, you know what, I need to show this guy doing this.
Yeah. That's very gracious of you. I appreciate that, man. That's a very nice compliment. You know, the thing that you're talking about on Payback, where it this is one of the nice things about working for a great guy like Mel Gibson, you know, because Mick is always there, of course, Mick Rogers. And Mick is an old and dear friend of mine. But, you know, there's a freedom, like, you know, we did a take and I kind of glared at her and then I walked away. And Mel said, "What were you thinking right there? What were you thinking right there?" I was thinking, man, I just want to take her face off with a big right hand. He goes, "Let's do it." And then we did that. And I said, well, how about if we do one? And then, you know, like I turned to go and I like kind of grabbed myself. And he goes, "Oh my God, yeah, let's do that." You know what I mean? It was like two kids playing.
Dude, it was so great. And it worked so wonderfully.
Yeah,
it's the one scene I remember from that movie that just I love.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, it was fun.
But that ties into the question. So now transitioning to a coordinator where you're in that position to give the notes.
Right.
You know, what was that like changing roles? Or I first worked with you as a coordinator and, you know, it was just a great experience because Ray Donovan season 6 was the first show where I was sort of on multiple episodes, like doubling one of the leads. Yeah. And so I got to learn a ton from you. And I think a lot of people, I'm sure, I know Rick Buckman feels the same way. And like a lot of the guys Rick Buckman, by the way, another New York stunt guy who was doubling Liev.
Okay. Yeah.
For those listening, when you hear like a term like 1X, 1X means you're the X is like you're the stunt double for the 1, which is the first person on the call sheet. So he was like the 1X. Like I was 3X because like Eddie Marson was 3
on the list.
So I know that a lot of people came out of the Ray Donovan experience like just loving the experience, not only because of working for you, but like you said earlier in the show, you came to New York. You didn't bring your team. You hired all the local guys. You know?
Yeah.
So at what point did you start coordinating? I know you coordinated a cult classic. You coordinated Swamp Thing back in the day, but but like, at what point did that switch start to happen for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, actually, the truth is that there was a little movie that I got into the guild with, which I was also the coordinator on. It's like the deal was real simple. It's like, hey guys, I'll do everything in your movie. Just get me in the guild. You know, just get me in SAG. But when I started thinking about it for real, I was just, Stunts was a tough crowd. All the older guys had coordinated. Not so much the Unlimited guys, but like the association guys, and that was a really closed shop, and they didn't want new guys, and you know, shit used to roll downhill, and you know, it's like wash my car, and ridiculous things like that, which just would never be something I, could bring myself to do. I would just have to walk away, which I did. And then I met Unlimited Guys, and, things turned around. But I'm just not of the, it's not my nature to subordinate guys under me. And, I think I want allies when I coordinate. I want friends and I want allies. When it comes time to be the boss, I don't have any problem doing that. But, and immediately transitioning to like, hey, we're not doing it that way. We're doing it this way. Let's wait and come over here and work on this till we're done, or whatever.
Gotta be objective.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the rest of the time, but I want guys to know that I care about them. I care about their process. I care about their safety, of course. And I care about them enjoying themselves. And the guys that can see where I'm at are the guys that I want around, and it's the guys that invariably are the best stuntmen. I
was working for a coordinator once, just about coordinators taking care of you. And like I just mentioned to him, like, hey, I'm like, my ankle's a little, and he looks at me and he goes, sit down. He goes, fuck these guys. He goes, it's not worth it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, he goes,
thank you.
Yeah. I was like, thank you. I appreciate that. He's like, yeah, fuck it. Not worth it.
Yeah, you just need to know what's important. Talking about Buckman, I mean, Buckman got it immediately, and I was really, really lucky with Buckman. First of all, he's a unicorn. I mean, if Liev was standing there and Buckman was standing there and they're in costume, they've been through makeup, and they're facing the other way, I can't tell who's who. I need a little something. Somebody move so I can, okay. It really worked out in my favor because I went to production and I said, hey, look, you have such an unbelievable double here, that like if there's a scene where he's leaving a building and walking down the sidewalk a little bit and getting in his car and going, put that at the end of the daily shooting schedule and you can use Buckman and send Liev home. Give Liev a break and you can use Buckman for that. And they were like, oh, that's great. It's worth it. I said, and there's enough stuff where he's pretty much going to be here most of the time anyway. So let's put him on a weekly. Let's keep him on a weekly. And so they did that. They thought it was worth their while. Because in LA, they would just day play, Liev's double. So there were a variety of guys, good stunt guys, that doubled him throughout those first 5 years. And, but I got to keep him every day. And he became like my assistant, and he really turned into sort of a de facto stunt coordinator because he was so careful with the politics and he's really, really smart guy. He's a good stuntman. He, he was a real like professional climber for years. And so he was the de facto rigger before there was rigging.
He used to have these crazy zip lines set up in the back of his backyard and stuff. I remember seeing.
Well, yeah, his family
shit was awesome.
Owned like adventure parks and stuff. Yeah.
They have a mountain, and so that really worked out for me. But we became really good friends, and so that's the way I want to coordinate it. And I don't know, it's always just sort of dropped into place for me in terms of coordinating. My problem is never, if anything, I see things that, I want to always make the action better, but the director or production doesn't necessarily want to do that. And I had to kind of give up that fight. If they want to, great. I float an idea. If they want to, great. If they don't want to, they don't want to. And just, that was a tricky one in the beginning. They're like, this could be so much better.
So now you're coordinating. You're further on in your career, and your son and your nephew are sort of continuing on in that. Was that something?
Right.
I know it's a standard question. Like, did you let them choose that, or is it something they always wanted to do, or did you kind of, was it like like I was a son of a fireman. I never became a fireman. I didn't want to do that. So
it was a unique time in stunts because when Zach was small, or Zach was a kid, and my daughter Rachel as well, you could use your kids to do stunts. Or like Dashnar could call me and go, I need Zach for 2 weeks. or hire his kids, and then it just got to be people were too uncomfortable with it. Liability, really, it was the legal department of old studios. So they were working. Not Seth. Seth grew up in Ohio, but he came out to me pretty. Like when he was 18, he came out and lived with me. He's going to turn 40 this year. Right.
So for those listening, Seth is Doc's nephew, and Zach is his son.
Yeah, correct. So it was, it was a natural thing for those guys. Both those guys are exceptional athletes, multi-talented, multi-skilled, all the requisite skills. They can act, they're smart, they've got a lot of savvy. I got to tell you, there's a group of guys that are all second generation guys that are in Brand X. My son is in Brand X, which is a stunt group, which is an elite stunt group. I think it's safe to say. There's a group of second generation guys in that group, like a cadre of guys kind of in their late 20s to early 40s. And man, oh man. And the beautiful thing for those guys is they grew up with the culture. They understood stunts. By the time they were 18, they all were seasoned guys. So that when they started their adult careers, they just knew how to behave, and they knew how to get the job done, and they knew what was required of them.
That's freaking awesome.
That is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So what do you got on the horizon, man? Anything up and coming you want to tell us about?
Well, things are so mixed up right now because of the potential Teamster strike and the IATSE strike, which neither one of those have been cleared up yet. So many people set dates and spent money, meaning producers, set dates and spent money, paying talent and stuff like that. Nobody's doing that. There's stuff going.
Because they all got screwed during the last strike.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But it's sort of been a personal year for me. Zach got married last August. Rachel is getting married. My daughter Rachel is getting married in June.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot going on right here.
Congrats, that's awesome.
Two times.
Thanks, man.
Congrats. Yeah.
Thanks. And
congrats to Zach and Rachel if you listen to this.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't have anything really booked, but I'm talking to a bunch of people. So
nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So I know you're not a big social media guy, but is there where would you point people to keep tabs on you? Anywhere?
Well, I could give you my address, and there's room to pitch tents outside my house.
Come by, knock on the door, bring up a coffee.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yes.
Coffee coffee with some sweetener in it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Is my cheeks getting red? I really don't have, like you said, I don't have a social media presence.
Right.
I don't, there's no place to really find me.
Cool.
I mean, that might change here. I'm getting a little, I've got a couple things that I might be doing that might be, social media might be required. But, right now, just Doc with a phone number and an email address.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yo, thank you so much for coming on. This was amazing.
This was a great episode. It was so great to just...
I feel like we could talk for another hour.
Right?
Easy,
I'm like, it sucks that we have our mom telling us that a time is up and we have to go home.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm having a ball too, guys.
We love you, Matt.
We're all talking about stuff we love.
We're talking about also Matt, our producer, who's silently in the room.
He was like,
telling us,
dude, this interview's been going on too long.
You're going on. But Matt does an amazing job. And by the way, for those, that are watching these episodes, Matt is the editor and he's amazing. So we love you, Matt. Yeah,
take care of us, Matt.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Well, let's do it again, guys.
Yes, definitely. Let's do it again. Thank you so much.
I think we definitely have enough to talk about. Do another episode. So that'd be awesome.
Sure. Whenever you have this new thing coming out that's social media worthy, we'll bring you back on for sure.
Okay, sounds good. Good.
Take
okay,
care,
guys.
Man.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Fights with Friends is brought to you by Breakfall Studios and Press Record Studios. Executive producers Stephen Kepfer, Paul Veracci, and Tiago Benedetti. Produced by Matthew Kaplowitz, Richard Butler, and Corey Gums. Associate producers Becca GT and Jared DeCrose. Our video editor is Matthew Kaplowitz. Original music by Aru Luster.